A tougher conference schedule for Penn State in 2025. So how does that affect the projection? What is their projected record? Well, before we get to 2025, let's look back at the projections from the last 4 seasons and see how they were. Again, these are not my personal predictions. This is just the formula that we use to get these record projections. In 2021, it was exactly right. They went 8-4. In 2022, the projection was 8-4 again, but they passed that and got to 10-2. In 2023, the projection was right on the money again, 10-2. They finished 10-2. Last season, projection was 10-2 again, but they were able to get to 11-1. So they've beaten the projections 2 of the last 4 years, and then 4 years they got it exactly right on the money. So we'll see what this looks like in 2025. Again, here's the schedule, and this is the scale that we use for our projected record formula. Games in the white, those are games against teams in the same tier, and we do have tier rankings. If you want to look at those, you can see exactly where all the teams are. If Penn State is a tier above a team, then that game goes into the purple, the 61 to 70% range. If that game is on the road, though, it drops back to the 50% range. So that's kind of how we do it. If they're at home and there are 2 tiers above a team, it'll be in the 71 to 80% range. And we use 65%, 75% to calculate those games, 50% of the games in the white. And then if it's over 80 or if it's 80 or more, then that means that it's going to be counted as a win when we do the projections. So we'll start with the easy wins, and you've got 5 of them. You've got Nevada, FIU, Villanova, Northwestern at home, and then Rutgers on the road. Given where I have Rutgers in this tier system, maybe that one should be in the blue. I don't know, but again, it did come out that way. So these are games that will be counted as wins. You would expect Penn State to win these games, and again, this is not. We don't base this off of predicting spreads, but it kind of works out where these games in the green are going to be games where the spread is like 20 or more. If it's in the blue, it's probably a double-digit spread. If it's in the purple, it's probably around a touchdown, 7, 8, 9 points. The 50-50 games spreads that would come out a little bit lower. That's not the way this is calculated, again, but it's just kind of a way to look at it. So you go now to games where I think they're going to be favored by double digits, games where they, again, are 2 tiers above their opponents, or potentially 3 tiers like with UCLA, Michigan State, because those games are on the road. Yeah, UCLA on the road, Michigan State on the road, and then Nebraska at home. And this is not figure in for the fact that UCLA is on the road right after a big game against Oregon. There is no human element to this. These are just numbers, and again, it gives us a projection of what to expect for each team, and this is what you can expect for Penn State. And like you saw there a second ago, it's usually pretty accurate. So UCLA, Michigan State, Nebraska, those will be games where where Penn State should win. But those are those games where it would be a huge upset, but we see some of those types of upsets every year. So watch out for those 3 games as potential big upsets. And then you've got Indiana and Iowa in the purple. I do expect Penn State to be about a touchdown favorite in these games. Again, with Indiana, I don't know how good they're going to be. That's going to be a tough team to predict. A lot of movement in the transfer portal there. Was it a one-hit wonder for them last year, or will they do this consistently? I don't know. So that's a tough one to predict. But just going by the tiers, we do have Penn State in tier 1, Indiana in tier 2. Iowa's in tier 3, but that game is on the road, and that's why that game comes out in the 61 to 70% range. And then you've got Oregon and Ohio State. So Penn State, Oregon, Ohio State, all 3 of those teams are in tier 1, which means those are going to be 50-50 games no matter where they are played. And you're talking about 2 huge games. If Penn State loses those 2 games, if they lose to Oregon and Ohio State, and you look at these other challenges like Iowa on the road, Indiana, Michigan State on the road, Nebraska, UCLA on the road, it's going to be tough for Penn State, in my opinion, to get to the playoff. It's going to be tough for them to get to 10-2 if they lose both of those games. Now, if they split those 2 games, then I think they're going to be in good shape. And obviously, if they win them both, we're talking about potentially the number 1 team in the country. So, yeah, projection for Penn State. How does it come out? When you average all these numbers out, you get 10-2. So 10-2 is the projection. I think that's very fair. You look at the Oregon and Ohio State games. Again, if they split those 2, there are enough challenges on this schedule where the odds would say they're going to lose a game, even though they may be favored in every game. the rest of those games. So it does, it does play out to where I think that's a fair projection. 10-2. I think that would be a solid season for Penn State. I think 11-1 would be a very good season. And I think 9-3 would be a big disappointment. So yeah, 10-2, the early projected record for Penn State in 2025. So how does this stack up with some of the other top teams in the Big Ten? Well, Penn State actually at the top. So we've got Oregon, Penn State, and Illinois. Those teams their projected records all came out to 10-2. 10-2 for those three teams. So those are your favorites, at least based off of this formula. It's crazy to see Ohio State at 9-3, even though they're a Tier 1 team, but their schedule is very tough. But if we're talking about conference standings, one of those losses could come to Texas, and Ohio State could be right there in the thick of things. We could have a four-way tie with two losses potentially in the Big Ten. That could happen. We saw something close to that in the SEC last year. It almost turned out to be a big four-way tie or whatever. So that's interesting. But yes, Penn State 10-2, projected to be right there at the top of the Big Ten and potentially back in the Big Ten championship game. What do you guys think about this schedule and this record? Do you think that's a fair projection? Do you think they'll do better or worse? And give me your thoughts down in the comments below.